Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Andy Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio. Thanks for being here, Andy.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday is right, once again. Now, Andy, all I do is keep hearing about everybody saying travel demand is robust. The airline said it. People are paying the higher prices. But then I look at the reaction that some of these website travel companies have had, Booking.com and Expedia, and they're down significantly so far this year. I would hate to see demand start to wane at this point. What kind of data are you guys seeing on a LikeFolio on these two?
Yeah, it's almost, some of these companies, you almost wonder if they'd be better off with less business. Right. It's kind of the times that we're in, but I think both things are true. That travel is back, or at least robust, and booking sites are struggling a little bit. At LikeFolio, we watch these trends overall, these consumer trends, and international travel is back. Of course, a lot of that's just pent up demand because there were so many restrictions, so many hoops to jump through in order to travel internationally for so long that now that's gotten a little easier. People are back for that. And same goes for traveling for work and thus booking a hotel. The leisure side of things is okay, picking back up and taking a trip, but mostly this is international and business travel that's occurring and growing at a good rate. Those impact, the booking sites much less than consumer travel would. So from a booking site perspective, we really zoomed in today for cash tags to talk about Expedia and Booking.com, and we are starting to see some divergence between the two, which is always interesting to us. Expedia, we're starting to see a real pickup in both consumer mentions of its products, specifically its VRBO brand, the competitor to Airbnb, doing very, very well inside of that Expedia portfolio. Booking.com just simply doesn't have that much going for it. So we're seeing Expedia kind of rise from the dead from an earnings score perspective. It's pretty much all VRBO at this point, because I think one of the things that we're really seeing that all of these booking sites are starting to struggle with in a big way is that the airlines have gotten much, much better at capturing that user who is searching for a flight via Google and so on. And users are getting more and more used to going directly to the airline's website itself. A lot of times the pricing is better, or at least it's clearer. It's easier to book a lot of times through those sites directly. And so we think the airlines are starting to do a good job of cutting out the middleman, and that's what Booking and Expedia are. And so I think the competition side of things is that, now they're starting to compete with the airlines themselves. So Expedia, very reliant on VRBO and those types of marketplace opportunities that the airlines can't offer. Booking.com really doesn't have that kind of outlet, that diversified portfolio. So when I compare the two, I'm putting Expedia on top of Booking, but both of them, I think, in for some headwinds as we move forward, because consumers just kind of cutting them out of the equation.
Andy, it feels this whole sector of the economy has a very Nike Foot Locker feel to it, where consumers are just going, why don't I go right to the source rather than take a middleman who's probably going to have some ad on there. One way or another, they're going to have an ad on. But two questions for you. Why is Expedia beating Bookings.com, other than Expedia is massive? VRBO, Airbnb might have been the best thing ever to happen to VRBO, because they're more popular now than they've ever been, right? But long term, Andy, if you're looking at these names, maybe a reason why they haven't rallied, is this a Google travel story? And is this just a direct-to-consumer and a cheaper alternative than these sites? Is that what's happening to these stocks?
Yeah, I really think it is. I think, It's different now. When you search Google for a flight, Google gives you results. You don't have to make that extra click to go to Expedia or Booking, and Google will take you directly to the airline itself. You can book rather quickly through that, maybe even get better pricing. So I think that's a big part of the story. I also think that these aren't the type of avenues that the business traveler uses. They have their own systems in place internally to find flights, and that's where most of the growth is coming from, is that international slash business traveler who's just simply not interested in using a Booking or an Expedia. And so I think you're right. This does kind of have that Nike Foot Locker kind of feel, where Foot Locker's the aggregator and Nike's the provider, and you've got airlines going directly to the consumer now, completely bypassing these aggregator sites. And so they have to get creative. And right now, Expedia's done a better job of getting creative through its VRBO acquisition and offering the consumer something they can't get anywhere else, which is tough to do in this environment.
Yeah, and you mentioned that divergence that you guys are seeing between Expedia and Booking.com on the travel aggregator comparison. And, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'll go on Expedia, I'll look at the flights or compare hotels or do something like that. I don't ever book through Expedia. I think that's a key. A lot of people just, kind of use it for that type of thing. But when you look at that, Andy, is there also some component, I know you guys are focused mainly here in North America as far as your data goes, recessionary fears? I mean, over in Europe, it doesn't seem like, the traveler is going to be as robust there, and they don't have VRBO, which is actually starting to advertise more and compete better against Airbnb. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely think you're right there. And I'll say what you've described, I think, is a major problem for these companies, in that they've almost become the search engine that no one, that the savvy customer at least is less and less likely to actually execute the trade on or execute the purchase on. When we look at some new data points that we're starting to use in the LikeFolio world, when we look at website visits to the airlines themselves, we see correlations to revenue in the 0.92 to 0.98 range, which one's the max. So that's unbelievably correlated. When people go to those websites, the airline websites, really highly coordinated to revenue. Not the case with Booking or Expedia. Getting people onto their sites is a step that used to lead directly to revenue. I don't think it's doing that anymore, and it tells me that the consumer is shifting their behavior in exactly the way that you described, Tom.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Andy, they don't have earnings until, Expedia does not have earnings until beginning of November. If you guys had an earnings score, based on the data, is it starting to move higher?
Well, for Expedia, it is, and for Booking, it's not. And so, we've still got Booking in that negative 25 range that it's been at for months. But seeing Expedia tick up, basically, mostly because of VRBO, I do think at this point in time, it's, still a couple weeks early, but at this point in time, if we're betting on one versus the other, we'd be much less scared to hold Expedia into earnings than Booking.
Yeah, and Expedia down nearly 50%. So feeling the pain just off of those 52-week lows. All right, great stuff as always, Andy. Thanks for bringing the data, and have a great weekend.
You too, thank you.
All right, that's Andy Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio, helping us with the travel sites. Kev.